Welcome to the very first UT Dallas e-learning faculty show and tell featuring Dr. Rebekah Nix. My name is Katrina Adams and I am an instructional designer for the UT Dallas e-learning team. And beside me is Dr. Darren Crone, e-learning director. Before we start the program, I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for coming. In creating this event, we had two major objectives. First, to create a sense of community amongst faculty who use e-learning to teach. Whether you teach an online class, a hybrid class, or a traditional face-to-face class. And second, to showcase examples of best practices, such as those Dr. Nix is going to show you in just a few minutes. Because of the great response we received regarding this event, we plan on having one of these each semester next year. So keep that in mind.
Are you guys going to come back? Well, I should probably ask you that
after.
after. Will there be pizza?
Yes. Let's see. Also, today's event will be recorded. What we're planning on doing is uploading the edited recording into e-learning. There's a section in there called the e-learning faculty forum. And so we'll email you once that recording is available, as well as to let you know when the next faculty show and tell is. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Rebekah Nix, Senior Lecturer in the School of Interdisciplinary Studies and Online Professor Extraordinaire. Dr. Nix.
I'll get that added to my business card. Wow. Thank you, Katrina, and thank you so much, Darren, as well, for putting this together. It's a real treat for me. And at least you'll be fed and surely entertained and hopefully learn a couple of little tricks or tips. But I think the best part of this is just seeing faces and meeting folks. I'm real impressed and really honored to be the first. I guess I can't do any worse than the others at this point. So I'm getting it over with so that I can enjoy more presentations in the future. I love this really informal setting. I do have some slides. I'm going to try to just whip through them so that I cover some of the points that Katrina suggested in the outline, which was very helpful. And then hopefully that'll leave us a little more time to talk, grab some cookies. Feel free to get up and do whatever you need to in the meantime. I'm not bothered by that. And just want to thank you as well for coming today. How many of you are teaching online or using our e-learning system right now? Okay, choir. We'll do the hallelujah thing later, but that's fantastic. That'll give me a little idea for where we are, so I will be able to go a little quicker, and you all will be able to ask questions whenever you want to, but again, more discussion towards the end. Because you are familiar with teaching online, when Katrina mentioned faculty show and tell, first thing that popped into my mind, this is really what I did over my summer vacation. That's when I spend time fixing the course up and then running for 2 semesters. So this is really exciting to be able to share with my local peers a little bit about what goes on in my summers. I am Rebekah Nix. Last year I made a pledge on Earth Day to go paperless. In my teaching, at least. I'm working on other areas of life. So all you really need is the www, and I don't think you need that anymore, utd.edu/ldrnix, that's me, and I'd love to hear from you beyond this. I have been teaching online at UT Dallas for almost 12 years now. I've been driving out here to this campus for, 25. I got my bachelor's in geosciences back in '86, and then my master's of arts in teaching degree over in science ed, in natural sciences and mathematics in '96, and came back to teach here in 2000-ish. I, in between that stint, got my doctorate in science education with focus on learning environments back in Curtin University of Technology, which is located in Perth, Western Australia. So since my accent hasn't shifted that much, you can probably guess that I have the benefit of having been a distance learner at that level in one of the largest online programs in the world today still. So that was exciting. And part of that perspective, I think, is something I can share with you as well. So, to get right to the good stuff, at UT Dallas, I teach 2 courses online. The one at the top, this is just a graph from my homepage, is educational technology, the one we'll be focusing on today. That's in the spring and the fall. I have 4 sections. It's now required of all the students in our seeking certification through the Teacher Development Center at my own house. So I got, start out with 90 to 100 students, end up with about 80 each semester, and get to know some of them better than others. The other course I teach is Lessons Learned. It's a science education course for graduate students, and it's offered in the summer only. But you can see a little more about that. I put this page up because I use my faculty website to get ahead. A lot of students, my undergraduate students, have never taken an online course before. They're real concerned about textbooks. I mean, I don't know, it's not all that different, but they have all these crazy phobias and concerns, and I, having been on that side, understand that they're very real. So I put a course overview. I post my syllabus to my website long before the provost is ready to beat us up to send those in, because that gives them all the information they need, software, any tools like that. And also a getting started in EdTech. So feel free to visit my site and borrow any of that. Katrina and eLearning have helped me get that down to where it's true and correct. And we try to keep that updated. But that has really helped to be able, when I get those emails, just to send them there. Everything's there. I use it as much as they do. And the same thing for 53030. Rather than switch over to the actual course, I'm going to use some slides, get through the basics, and then we can switch into the real course, because I can't talk and walk and chew gum and drive my class. Thought it might be a little easier to get through it and then open it up. So before we do that, give you a little background about the course, and this is a graph from that overview. I use surveys, the survey tool, package files for lessons, and I have a semester-long project that they work on in a separate area within the course. There is a textbook. When the course became required, a lot of students needed something to hold on to, needed all that junk written down that I didn't want to transcribe when it went from an elective. So I picked a good textbook that is feeds into the lessons, and then the quizzes are over this material, so I don't have to worry too much about their reading that. They like to see those quiz scores pop up. The final exam, we use the CPR tool. Have any of y'all used the calibrated peer review that we had earlier? Okay, good. We don't have that anymore. What we're using now is integrated with the Turnitin system. And I left the CPR acronym and call it constructive peer review. It's called PeerMark in the Turnitin. So that component still works for my class. And then I have group discussions and a whole class discussion that I call the commons area. This is the home page when you enter my class. Pretty typical Blackboard Web CT page. Did have a lot of fun that summer before last, creating some different icons. The course icon set you may not recognize because that's proprietary. I'll share it with you if you're a dog person. Just pick some images of my dog. A lot of my students are uncomfortable with technology, and Sundance, our puppy dog up at the top there, has proved to be a fantastic TA and sort of gives them a different angle for those who don't feel real comfortable interfacing through a keyboard. So that's been a blast and really hasn't offended anyone, sort of sets a tone for the class and lets them know I'm human actually behind here. I spent a lot of time developing a welcome module, and we don't spend a week of the 15 weeks going through that. I mean, if they want to find out who I am, they can find out who I am. And most of them do. I'm still in the top 10 favorite pages, believe it or not. I'm not sure if they're laughing at me or with me on the video. There's a little video introduction, a little bit of my credentials, a little more about the class and its history, course overview, discussion board tutorial, and a tour of the constructive peer review. Those things are what I refer students intermittently to all throughout the semester, so it's really handy to have it in a separate place. It's always there. If the course opens before class actually starts, that stuff is there and they can get ahead, which is also a nice thing to do. The other sort of big piece of ed tech is the projects. So I have that in a separate area too. Every time they log into the class, I want them to see these icons and remember they have a project to do, even though it's intertwined throughout the lessons. They do 3 projects, and then all that feeds into their final exam. With 100 students, going from like 20 students to 100 students, the biggest hurdle was figuring out a way to really grade a final exam for content and still have an open-ended project. I did not want to give up that open-ended project. And the final exam being a summary of the components of Gowans' V, which is a problem-solving heuristic used in science education quite a bit, works here. Throughout the semester, each of these parts of the V ties directly to one of their small group discussions. So this side is part A, the project. This side is project B. Project C is sort of a synthesis of all of those. And then on the final exam, I basically ask these questions, and they've had the chance to refine and develop their project so that at the end of the semester, they've actually got something they can carry in on their interviews and show their new professors and usually principals, and usually implement those projects in their own classrooms, which is really cool. All of that sort of sets up this cycle. It's called the parade of V's, to where one question leads to another and another and another, so it never really ends. And it gives them a tool, I think, when they get in their own classrooms or in the real world to do what they need to do. I use the announcements extensively, and it looks like a lot of work. This top one is an example of a really detailed weekly checklist. They're new, they're undergraduates still, new to online learning, so I try to help them out as much as I can. The cool thing is, I wrote those announcements, 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, and wrote them pretty generically, used terms that have a long shelf life, so I don't have to worry when I tweak the lessons. I don't really have to tweak these. And those are set up with the, the selective release, where I use the calendar, so they pop up automatically each week to help the students remember they're in my class and need to be doing some stuff. I also have those set up with a pop-up. We've got that great little pop-up feature in e-learning now. So every time they log in, the first time in the week, they get the ping, you've got stuff to do, and here's the list. And that really helps some students just check. Every other week, I try to put in a personal comment. When we had the wild weather and campus was closed, man, I was so busy. Students were all over the place. You probably saw the same effect, but it was fantastic. Everybody got caught up and we worked like crazy. Also, any local events, any real things that I can send my students to is great. My class is 100% online. It's 100% asynchronous. So I'm probably a good starting point for this series, since I'm at the absolute opposite end of the face-to-face traditional courses that I attended when I went here. So some of the things you'll see are because it is completely distant. And we decided that future teachers really needed that experience. In surveys that I've conducted still, just this semester, over half of my students have not taken an online course of any sort, even hybrid. So we really wanted to make sure before they got into the real world, before they started having to teach online, because the K-12 teachers are using Blackboard and several other platforms extensively, that they had this experience, and like I did, and knew what it was like to be on the other side. The surveys, each week, I use the same structure for the lessons, and we'll look at that in a minute. But each week I start off with a survey. It's sort of an easy way to get them going, to get them clicking, to get some ideas in their heads without putting any pressure on them for content. And I put that, you can see survey says, that top area there, We share that in the group whole class discussion. There's also a teacher's lounge where they can share good news or exciting things or ideas or links they want to share with their peers that aren't related to the class exactly. And course comments where I like to get feedback if something isn't working really clearly or there's some issues that I can make improvements in those summer days off. They put that there. So I try to structure it, try to help them learn how to structure discussion boards and try to make my life easier. So this is sort of what those weekly surveys do. It's fun after they've completed the week, and it's required. I'll show you how we do that on the next slide. Then I go in, I take the group results and report on them back to the class, and it gives me an opportunity to share just some general comments that when you're the only person on the other end, it feels like you're getting, one-to-one comments. And the students then are encouraged to see where they fit within those other students that they don't ever get to see in the class. So it gives them a sense of belonging, a sense of, well, I'm not that different when, 49% of the class hasn't taken an online class either, so I'm okay. That's one way that I try to build that sense of community and reduce some of that fear or isolation that online students do feel, even if they meet face-to-face for other classes throughout the semester. That's been real fun, and I do collect that data, and it informs me as to the demographics of my students because they're changing every semester, so I can keep the course a little more relevant. This is a graph of the lessons area. I put a description up at the top so that if they do enter the course before we actually start with lessons, there's something on that page. They don't think it's broken already or that they're missing something. And this reminds them, this is where the lessons are. Here's how you handle it. Because they don't always show up on the first day of class. I have headers for the weeks 1 to 5. That's our objective, learning objective in general. And then each week, the other lessons pop up, become available. I kept them in this order because I wanted them to remember that they learned stuff in week 1, and they have to scroll through that by the time. By now, they have to scroll a little bit to get to the bottom, and that's intentional, whereas in some courses, you may want that up at the top so they can get straight to what's current. This is a pretty busy page, but I wanted to show the different navigation forms that are in each lesson. Each lesson, as I said, follows the exact same format. You see the nice structure here that Katrina helped me set up with the indents and all that, which has been really nice. I encourage students to go actually to the lesson to work through everything because she's managed to put links directly to their specific weekly group discussion, which is nice, and to the quiz. So they don't have to go into that assessments button on the side and search for the right quiz or whatever. And what I think is really cool, all this is set up with an adaptive release. I want the information from the surveys for my own research. And they sign their disclosure and that stuff in the beginning. They don't get to see the lesson until there's a submission in the grade book for that survey. It doesn't matter what they put in, but they can't get to the lesson, which means I can't get to the quiz unless they've given me that survey. So that's a kind of a neat way to sort of enforce, I hate to say a linear process, but it gets things done that need to be done in that fashion. And the lesson has information that sets up the discussion. All of that sets up things in the quiz, so I really like that feature. We've got the course navigation forward and backs here. Of course, they can click. All of those are hyperlinked once they've opened the lesson and jump right back to a useful page or wherever I direct them if they had a specific question. And then they can also click directly to any of these pages or use this to navigate. I've got my own little forward and back buttons in the pages themselves. So I don't know how they run the course, but they figure out what works for them, and it doesn't hurt me to add that in. This is where in the lesson I discuss some of the survey results from the semester before. Use lots of graphics is the point here. We've got color, full color on most of these devices. Try to break up the text, and then a little Sundance makes everybody happy. myself included, mostly myself. I learned after a few years that I spend more time in this class than anybody else on the planet. All of them combined, they don't even come close. So when I had the opportunity to update the course and rebuild it, I decided to use images of Colorado, use my puppy dog, which if I'm working, I'm not walking her, so it works out nicely. It makes me happy, makes them happy, gives us something to talk about other than just the content. I don't use assignments per se, although we do have a great function in e-learning. But I do have things throughout the class. This is one of my deals. Anytime I teach a face-to-face class, I use experiential training metaphors and activities like that. And I thought, can I do that online? I can. I teach online exactly like I did face-to-face. And I had a couple overlaps. When I was in those face-to-face classes, I captured everything I could because I knew I was going to move online. Once I was teaching online in some of the other courses, I got gangs together, just groups of students, to develop some of the pieces I wanted to have an online course. I didn't want to compromise my teaching style just because my method of delivery was changed. And I've been really pleased to see that I don't have to do that. So I just took a lot of pictures of my activities. We go down and it's just simple stuff. I mean, I did this myself before we had the great team in place here. There's a little QuickTime video to where they can see it happening and see what it sounds like, or hear what it sounds like and see what it looks like. And then because they're teachers, these are activities that they might use in their future classrooms. So I give them the PDF instructions in a more usable format than the way I've got it in the lesson page itself. So that's loads of fun. Throughout the lesson then I'll refer back to that, and you can see these are those sections on the V, and then that sets up with all that background and a sort of a conceptual approach what they put in on their group discussions. Because I teach a range of students, totally different abilities, I don't require them to do stuff like tutorials, library tutorials and things like that. I give them a lot of options, things that I found useful, things that my students have suggested were helpful, like the choosing the database tutorial. That's one thing they have to do for this assignment, for their group discussion. If they're not comfortable, they have this option, but I don't require it. I don't take tabs. Yeah, they click through the tutorial. It's there if they want it. So it's been nice to add things like that and not worry about it. These are those group discussion page. At first I had tried to figure out all these funky ways to set up groups. There's a lot of literature about how to set up a group for discussion. I had small groups and then 5 or 6 students, and they didn't work so well, not with undergraduates at least. They do pretty well with the graduate course, but the undergraduates aren't disciplined enough or regular enough in their schedules to keep that going. So I require them to make one original post, and then I require them to respond to another person's original post so that there is a little bit of a pseudo discussion going on. And they get 2 points, one for the original, one for the reply. It's just that simple. These again relate to their projects, so it helps them do a little peer talk, a little figuring out, a little roundabout before they email me questions. And they really seem to enjoy it. Instead of setting up groups, I've tried small groups, medium groups, large groups. I have 4 sections of EdTech that feed into the same course. I just set up 4 groups with the sections. That puts about 15 to 20 students in a group. And it's great because you'll see the ones. There's always somebody who posts first in each group. But with that many students, sometimes somebody gets there first. So you don't have the same sort of sequence of, oh yeah, I'll wait till whoever posts and then I'll just reply to that. So you get a little more energy, at least in my courses. That's what I found after many semesters of painful regret on my behalf. Because that was the hardest part for me to get going, was the groups. And I think using that V and tying it all throughout the lessons really has made those discussions far more meaningful for myself and the students. I don't read all of them. The new button is great in our e-learning system. You don't even have to go in and read through all the threads. I just sort of hit that and see if there's anything kind of upsetting or inappropriate. Most of them, they've got a great exchange, and it's perfect for my students because they're going to be future teachers. That giving and receiving feedback is really useful. So every now and then, the first week when they set up their focus questions, I do go in and respond personally so that they get started on the right track. Here and there, I mostly just lurk in the group discussions. I do check them. They don't probably believe me, but I do. And sometimes I have had to do things, but for the most part, they're pretty decent to each other. Again, the class discussions is where we had the survey, teacher's lounge, and the last group discussion, because I'm tired of grading by then and I have finals and other things to grade, is my favorite assignment. They have worked all semester on their project, and their task is to design a logo for their project, and they post it on the discussion board, the whole class one, and everybody then can go in, and at this point I add in the rating tool so that they can sort of say, yeah, that was my favorite, and they get a kick out of that. I had been posting their logos to my faculty website, and it was just a nightmare. It was a lot of work before we had this tool. So now using the class discussion takes care of all that. They do all the uploading, they do all the back and forth, and I don't have to mess with that because I'm busy grading. The quizzes are the last thing they do each week of the lesson. Like I said, they're very basic. The nice thing about those is that it gives them immediate feedback. I've just got the multiple choice questions that they're going to have to take for their exit exam. So it's good for them to get practice taking an online multiple choice question, because the reading, they're catching mistakes. They're like, why did I get this wrong? I don't understand why I can't do these. It's usually just a technical, you're not reading carefully enough, or you forgot to hit submit, you just saved it and you're not getting a score. So they're just really quick over the reading in the textbook. Not a big deal, but it's something they get back just like that. They see something in the grade book populated and they know they're making progress. And I do take advantage of the feedback. That first time when I set up the quiz, I can write in responses, and each time anybody goes there, I'm multiplying my responses directly to them individually, which is nice. I left this outdated screen grab of the grade book to make a point. This was the hardest part in our new e-learning system for me, but I think it's the most important part from a student point of view. You've got that extra tab over there, student view. Make sure you go in and look at your grade books. That's probably the function that we should use, all of us, since we have an electronic grade book in e-learning. You can change the titles. It depends on how you set up your assignments and quizzes and that sort of thing. I didn't do such a good job at the beginning, but you can see Q1, Quiz 1 is the Student Responsibility Agreement. That is a lot more meaningful than S01. So you can go in and edit those things. Katrina will help you because I can't do it very well. But it was real important to me to get that in order so that as they see, when they go to the grade book, they see these items, they see, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, in a chronological sequence rather than all the surveys, all the quizzes, all that. It's the little things that I think really make a big difference. So when you get to that point, that little attention to detail can make all the difference in the other side of the screen. The other thing I do is I try to vary the display. Got completed or not completed for the surveys because they're not graded. I give them an actual percentage of their quizzes because that is a really concrete, distinct thing. And then on projects, this is actually now a letter grade. So they see some variety. They can see they're doing different things and they're being assessed at different levels throughout the course. So that's basically my class in a nutshell. We do that 15 times. And by the time we get to the end of the semester, they're pretty comfortable with the navigation, with the process. Every survey is different. So even with that consistent structure, the lessons, the activities, the content, even the readings in the textbook, add enough variety that it doesn't seem repetitive, but they don't have that learning curve. I just want to level that off as soon as we can. And it seems to be working. One of Katrina's questions to me was, why am I teaching online? And that's a good one. It's not because I don't like people. This is fantastic. I just can't believe there's like real people here. It's really cool. I did teach face-to-face about a decade ago, before we had nice classrooms and buildings like this. It was in the spring semester. It stormed every night at 7:45, and I'm a morning person. At 7:45, we went into this, you all may remember the training room that was 3 columns of computers like this big with the monitors that I couldn't see over. You certainly couldn't see over if you were sitting down. And there was these 3 alleys. Teachers in my class are usually doing their student teaching, which means they're on their campus at 6 a.m. They're there till 3, 4, 5. Then they come home and grade, write lesson plans, and so on and so forth. And then they had to come to my class. Well, besides all that, it was usually storming, so none of the computers were working because the power would go out. It was just a nightmare, and it's not the type of room that I needed, but we needed computers. So going online was fantastic for me. It eliminated the classroom technology problems that we had back then, and it fit my students better. I then got in with the UT Telecampus. Are y'all heard of Telecampus? Okay, it's no longer either, but that's okay. But they really set the pace. They were on the bleeding edge of distance learning, so I was able to leverage that experience, and that was very helpful. Dean Fair challenged me. He says, "Can you do that? Put a course online." This was way back in the early days, and I said, "Yeah, I think so." Then I learned how to ride the horse, but it was really fun, and I am the product of Telecampus's extremely commendable work in that area. It really was the bleeding edge, and they have been nationally recognized for their work because it was just so ahead of the curve. And now that they're decentralized, it's really fantastic that we've got all of that foundation here. So it is an exciting time to be in e-learning or distance learning or hybrid, whatever you want to call it, because, man, we've got the stuff in place now to really fly. UT Dallas, as I mentioned, it was an elective course, and we had a pretty good response just because I think the topic is cool. And then when it was required, I did make some changes to the class. The other thing was lessons learned. I've got 8 points here that I think could apply to anyone teaching online or face-to-face for that matter. They're nothing mind-blowing or earth-shattering, just things that you might not think about that I do think matter, especially in the online environment. As you saw, I welcome my students to class. Seriously, I send them an email. I use our Galaxy or Orion or wherever you get the class rosters, whichever one that is, and I send them a welcome email directing them to my homepage, saying it's going to be okay. I'm real, and we're going to have class. You're okay. Provide meaningful feedback regularly. Some of that I do through the announcements. I do it a lot through email. If they have an individual question, we email. But even with 100 students, I'm not getting that much because the discussions is where they really like to share. And I use that as well if there's something that I can point out to everybody if I've made a mistake or something's not working quite right. Go ahead and personalize your course comfortably. I mean, all of these are little pieces you can do one at a time. That's the beauty of online teaching. You don't have to have it perfect. And I've just added things, not to overload. You gotta be real careful you don't add too much because it's really easy to just keep sticking stuff in there from our side of the screen. Pretty hard if they have 14 things they got to do in the week instead of those 6. Continually improve your course incrementally. If you're not getting feedback from your students to you, then you're missing out on a lot of good information. They see it totally different than we do from the instructor side. TAs, I don't have a TA, but if you did, those sort of folks, whoever's in there, they're the ones that are really using that class. And you know, it's hard not to think through all the things you thought through that maybe didn't manifest or don't display like you thought on the other end. Sometimes they're right. Opportunities for individualization. That's where the project design came in. I let my students pick their topic. They pick any technology that they could use in their classrooms, and they investigate it. They're learning the concepts, the procedures, the way to think through how to evaluate technology integration, and how to actually implement those integrations, even though we're just doing it on paper at this point. It's like writing a grant. So it's that open. They can pick and choose whatever they're interested in and still learn what I want them to learn about ed tech. Leverage new tools for learning collaboratively to groups. I've added in a blog feature that they're not picking up on, and I'm okay with that. I don't do chat because I'm not a chatty type, and they are way too chatty. Let them do that out of the comments. Encourage students to contribute appropriately, and I honestly have not had a problem. I had one issue with a student that was implying things on the discussion board, but we'll put that to the end. But you do have to watch them if you give them that opportunity. And require applicable products objectively. Again, none of that busy work. If they know how to search a database, don't make them sit through a tutorial about searching the database, in my opinion. That works with my students. So those are my lessons learned. Quickly, the challenges faced. It's the same for all of us. Content is ever changing. Students are transitioning. And instructors are managing. I can't even remember how many platforms I've taught on since I started 10 years ago. Alexia, you've been right there beside me. The package files, you can build things smartly, and that's where this expertise is fantastic to have, so that you don't have to rebuild every time they go from Blackboard to FCT to whatever the next one's going to be, whenever that happens. The conceptual approach, I've been teaching the same class basically for 10 years, and even though my students are changing, I teach it a little differently. It's still the same topic, so I can be expert and quicker and better for my students in that sense. And the program requirement was really nice. I just couldn't resist. This Bloom's taxonomy is near and dear to all teachers' hearts. This was 1956, where it was really cut and dried. 2009, we were just started getting the web going, and everything was getting crazy. And now here we are in 2010, a year later. It's crazy, and 2011 is out now. I don't even want to look at it until this summer. So we're doing okay. Benefits and rewards, similarly, almost parallel. Content is available. If you haven't looked at some of the learning objects, the repositories, MIT, Stanford, all those things are online. There are licensing issues that you need to watch out for, but there are a lot of great repositories with remedial, tutorial, just reinforcing things that you could add in as one of those clicks if you'd like. The students are eager. I mean, it's just getting more and more exciting for me to teach, and I can't believe that because I get bored really quick. But I'm loving our students out here, and we're still pretty sneaky. That'll never go away. We're experienced. We've got to leverage the things we have that the LMS doesn't have, and that's what's fun about this mode of delivery, I think. We've got knowledge so we can be crafty, and we've got wisdom so we can still stay in control, even though they may think they're in control of us. That's fun later when they realize, oh, you did know what you were talking about. This email I got not too long ago, I'm beginning to see how great it was to go through your class. I mean, that's a raise for me. That's just Merry Christmas, thank you. It takes a while, but I think that's why we're probably all in this room. My future plans, ED 4372, I want to add an embedded librarian. That's really successful in other courses that I've been involved with. That's why I invited Stephanie, our liaison, to come to this presentation. So she's aware of that now. Sundance, my TA, does have a Facebook page. I didn't want to commingle my life with my work. So I want to look at ways to leverage that. That was because the students wanted a Facebook page and to keep connected beyond EdTech, because we get this synergy going, this sharing of ideas. They get excited. They want to let everybody in class know that their project worked when they got in their own classrooms. So that's kind of fun. Eventually, maybe you require an e-portfolio artifact, but kind of sticky right now. 5305, I want to automate some things, expand the series, maybe add playlists. And in general, I want to publish some of the research. I have been doing my own research, learning environments throughout these course offerings, which is fun. Refashion some of it for mobile e-learning. Some of the things fit, some of them don't. That's why the textbook is nice. They can do that on the train or under a tree or wherever without having to be connected or staring at a small screen. Mainly just keep having fun, learning even more, and that's why this is so exciting for me. That's all I had formally, which was probably more than you expected. I think there's still more pizza, there's more cookies, there's Cokes, and any questions for any of us? Yes, ma'am.
When you were doing discussion and going back to the idea where you had required students to do an original post and then a response post, how do you differentiate between response posts that say that was cool and response posts that actually put some thought into it?
Yeah, I had a 3-point rubric at one point, and I didn't like grading discussion posts. I hated it. And when it got to be 100 of them, I really hated it. And the trick, what really changed it for me, and what really cleared out some of that junk, and that's great, do an add a gal or an add a boy or whatever every now and then, because they are friends, and they are peers, and they are colleagues, and they do get excited, and sometimes the yeah is all they need on one level. So I don't count off for that, but I think tying it into their project to where it's real important feedback that they're getting, and letting them choose their own subjects. They've got opinions on this stuff. I just went to the 2 points. It's basically a participation grade. They get 1 point for posting, 1 point for responding. Their peers have been pretty good about saying, that's not helping me, I want more feedback, or asking their groups for specific feedback. I'm thinking about doing this, but somebody suggested I do that. What do you guys think? And man, they just run with that. So I think, I know for a fact, the getting the question right, the lead question, and setting it up is what made the difference for my course. Otherwise, chit chat. And then I give them areas for chit chat. Yay for you for getting a job or whatever. And I think setting up those specific areas, spending a lot of time in that first week explaining how the course is set up. This discussion over here is serious. This is helping you get your final exam answer right. And if you don't help each other and you don't think through it, when I go in and grade you for content and quality, you ain't gonna get it, and you've only got like 9 questions, and they're limited. So they've got to be at the executive summary level and know what they're talking about. And I think they feel that from the beginning. But I do spend a lot of time setting up, here's how you respond here, here's where you want to just talk. And some of that goes on, but I've been real impressed. And I can show you some of the examples of my questions. It's taken me 11 years to get it right. Seriously, it's not easy. But once you do, it really is a phenomenally valuable tool, especially in online learning or even in a face-to-face class, I think. They get that time to think. The responses have always been so rich and so deep when you don't put them on the spot. It takes me a while to sort of cogitate on things. I like to sleep on things and wake up. I can't do that in a 3-hour class. Well, I shouldn't.
Hi, Rebekah Carol Flannery. I teach Operations Research since 301. And I wanted to ask your opinion on the length of time that the window should be for an assessment.
That's a good question. And I didn't address that. We have Ed Tech weeks. I found that my students work better when we open the class on Thursday morning, and they have a whole week. Again, that's because we're asynchronous, and everything's due by midnight on Wednesday night. So, as you can see from the lessons, they can do it whenever they want to. Those quizzes, those little 4 to 6 item multiple choice questions are timed. They're, I think, 20 minutes. That's long enough to read it. go get the book, find the answer, click on the right thing. At least I know they know that fact, which is my goal in having the textbook and having the questions. The final exam, I actually give them the rubric. They know what those questions are going to be on the final exam for the most part. I told them to, type it in Word. They ought to be ready. They ought to be able to just cut and paste their answers into my final. And that is a 30-minute time limit. I don't cut anything off. I mean, you can make things go away, and Blackboard, our website, wherever it is now, has a great, signal that something was turned in late. And I do pay attention to that. But sometimes life happens, and I found that it happens a lot to these students. They miss it by a day, they miss it by 2 days because their 12th grandmother just died, and I'm sorry about that. And it could be true, but I just leave everything open, and I can look in my grade book and see if somebody's really slacking. If I see a lot of blanks, I might email and say, "You doing okay?" That's become really less of an issue since it does track, and having that, they can't go on to the next thing until they've done the thing prior. They know when they're getting back too far. They can't just sort of go in one night and click, 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 and sneak through. That really sets me off. Don't think you can do that. And I've gotten very blunt emails. It's like, man, I signed up for this because I just wanted to click my way through it. I didn't realize I was going to have to work in this class. I'm like, see you next year, And they show up again, and with a much healthier respect.
Have you had to make adaptations for students with accessibility issues, and how has that worked?
So far, I have not been made aware of any of that by my students. I'm very careful because I think of the telecampus training to make my classes accessible. The videos are all transcribed. The PDFs, everything has been through, I don't know if you guys have it, but I know Carrie Tate over in Disability Services does have the JAWS software. It used to be Bobby approved and that sort of stuff. There is software that you can run your course through, and it will say, you got a problem here, you need to caption this or something. So I've been very careful as I built my class. I did have a student, I don't ever see him, so I don't even have a clue about a physical issue unless they raise it. I did have one student who had difficulty typing, and the projects, they have to create them and then they PDF them to share. We talked, and she was a great student. I couldn't understand why her projects were so weak and always late. And finally she said, I just can't type. And I said, well, do you have one of those little micro cassette things? Just talk it out, So we worked it out, and that worked out fine. Back then, there's some audio tools you could do if I had a really distant student. But so far, I have been, I guess, quite lucky. But I have been very careful in how I design the course. And either Carrie's office or Katrina, I know, is very sensitive to that over in Darren Deary. All of those guys know how to.
If you have any questions about that, if you'd like us to take a look at your course, and we work very closely with Carrie Davis' office, we can definitely come to your direction. So we have actually come across more and more, probably, I would say, several per semester of students with usually with this might be an extended test window, but occasionally with blind students with students. So it's been wonderful accommodations that we made.
Good question, thank you.
Yes.
Well, not yet. My boss is here now. My boss never knows where I am. I get these emails from her and she's like, where the heck are you? I'm like, I'm in my office, 2 doors down.
So what would the difficulty be of, say, you live in Colorado?
I've entered grades from that rock. And that's part of the beauty of it. That's why I give them a little leeway. If life happens, okay, I'm not going to get to it anyways until next week. So go ahead and finish and catch up before I look and get it made. That's just the way my class is designed. I know other things are important. And I do use those projects, A, B, and C, as milestone, stick in the ground. If you're not caught up by then, you're going to get a 0 for that participation grade, which will kill them. So the way you weight your grading in an online course may be different than you would in a face-to-face class, because I want them in class. And that's the hardest part, I think, not being able to see them. But I do. I travel back and forth. I've worked in Australia, Canada, all over the place. As long as I can get on the internet, that's my proof to them that there are no excuses.
Well, it was leading to another question is, since this is becoming more and more of a possibility, what's the possibility that UTD will no longer be, strictly a Dallas-centered thing, and that people from Hong Kong or England can stay at home there and enter the classes they're here?
Yeah, and of course I can't speak to that. Do you
I
know
just
an
wanted to
opinion?
say that one of my students
Yes,
this semester is in Qatar. I'm not even sure I'm saying it right, but that's where he's taking class.
I have had students all around, and we share, before Brownsville program was so big, the telecampus was sort of a central hub, and a lot of their students took my classes in elective. The way that I've seen it done in most online consortiums is you have a host campus or a home campus, and that is where you get your look, your feel, your flavor, your stature, or whatever. That's where you pay your tuition, and that's where your degree is granted from. Even in the collaborative degrees that they've had across system, you pick a home campus. So I don't know that time or place really is going to matter that much, but the institutional brand or identity, I think, will always be there, and that'll be for the institution to decide how that goes.
Well, it's just interesting. I mean, like tuition rates and stuff like that, you calculate on those, and the knock-on effect on everything else that a college campus is about, like the social aspect.
Yeah, exactly, and there's a lot of value to coming to campus, and some students need to completely online. I don't know that undergraduates are quite ready for that, but I don't know. It's interesting. There's almost every flavor around in existence right now, from A to Z, in terms of degree plans and diplomas.
I mean, there are degrees that you can get completely online and not do different classes. PWU, UNTs, librarians, another MLS. There are different things, and I've taken online courses completely online. I took them as an adult, and I love them because I'm working and I have boxing, I have family, so it gives me the flexibility that I need. And and then it also teaches them racially how social and chatty. I hate the discussions. That's my least favorite part. I'm waiting for the evaluation so I can say that, because then I go and I have to have the original thought, and then I have to respond to someone with an original thought. So I end up doing great point, blah blah. That reminded me of da 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 da, so that I could cover that, to do that. So I think it depends on the student. Like I said, as an adult learner, kicks ass. Loves it.
Yeah, but will it change campuses in 10 years? I mean, will
Yeah.
the concept of a campus be entirely digital compared to
Yeah.
like the University of Phoenix?
Yeah, I think so. I think it makes it for the type of learner. As the adult learners and the kids coming back, the 18-year-old and the 17-year-olds who are going to campus for the full time and have that social experience and different things, they still may want that going away to college, that stuff. I'm 37, been there, done that. Just give me the course that I can access and do. And also the idea of the changing for college is just not for the 18-year-old coming out of high school going in. People are retraining, people are going into second careers, going to different things. So there's more of a need for an adult learner.
I sure don't see UT campus going away. It's fancy and beautiful and wonderful as it's gotten. That would be a shame. I'm enjoying it finally after so many cranes and bulldozers. There is another class in here, I think, so I would like to get to your question really quickly while we're all here.
Real quick, me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, the issue of academic honesty or dishonesty, how do you deal with that? It seems like you almost have to just shrug your shoulders and say,
They can do that in a face-to-face class probably easier around me than they can online. Part of that has to do with the individualized project design. I do run all of those papers through Turnitin. Creating my own database, I have caught some folks that turned in somebody's paper from last semester, because the assignments are same.
Something even different from that, you know, like you just say to your friend who's a whiz at math, please take my math test online for me. How's that anyone ever gonna know? And do we care? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, the Judicial Affairs Office can answer that better, and there are some tricks at time tests. The main thing is I put a lot of focus on their projects, and they are very individualized. And by the third or fourth week, I pretty well know each of those kids, who they are, and you can kind of get a sense of them. That's why the discussions are helpful, because it gives me a sort of a glimpse into them, who they are and their style. Yeah, I'm sure it happens. I know it happens. Of course it does. But it happens here too, in exactly the same way. It's probably, by the time I get my students, they're pretty honest. They're ready to graduate, and they're not all together, because they're not all in their classes. I don't have a good answer, and I don't worry too much about that because I feel like I've got enough authentic assessment. But there are proctor options. There are, you know, of course, we're doing hybrid. Come take the test, show me your ID, and sit down and turn off everything. That's a consideration depending on your content. My content, we just hope for the best. And so far, so good.
For proctors, I take it on where it's pick up the camera, show me the room you're in.
It gets
Show
pretty
me an
sneaky.
ID, and let me make sure that the face matches. And I'm connected to your computer, so I'll see everything through that camera as you're taking the test from your desktop.
So far, that's not an issue in our department, just because we do know each other and our students. I'll get them towards the end of their career or their studies, juniors and seniors, and they're pretty dedicated by then. Not a good answer, but there are workarounds. There's a lot of literature out about how to confront that, and I've got some friends who are deep into that. There's a couple of great websites I could share with you, or we may post to the website, to the e-learning site if they're not there. So that's a good question.
Well, kind of the flip side of the student motivated learning. If they're motivated to learn, they'll teach each other, and also if they don't learn what they're supposed to learn, they're going to punish themselves.
Yeah. And right behind you.
This is real quick, I'm sorry. We deal with that question, that's probably the most popular question we get from professors. If you would like to get with us, that's one thing that I really appreciate you all coming. If there is an alternative work here. Here's the rub. Just want you guys to know that we are here for you. Okay? If you guys need anything, if you have any questions, exactly like this, we're there for consultation. We don't charge. Okay? Our doors are open. Okay, so just
And also, before we continue, I do have this room for another 30 minutes. So if you want to stay here and ask more questions, eat more pizza, by all means.
That's a good idea.
But as Darren mentioned, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, seriously, this is fantastic. Hey, I think you have another question?
Yes, I do.
Say it, quick.
How do you deal with a class that is very discussion oriented, where you discuss a reading, a historical text, a literary text, and you really need to have synchronous debate going and that sharing of knowledge?
I'll defer to Darren. There are tools that are phenomenal, and these guys will make it happen for you. I guarantee it can be done. I don't do it that way anymore, not in this class, just for the obvious reasons. But Darren, you want to speak to that? Or?
Are you talking about you want to do it synchronous or asynchronous?
Synchronous.
Synchronous. Right now you use Adobe Connect. That's there's a web conference tool. In order to get together, you just do a standard web conference. The university is also going to be rolling out Microsoft Event, which will give the student with that idea to understanding they'll be able to log into a web conferencing thing. But yeah, the more you guys come to these things, the more I'm going to let you in on some really cool things. So
Yeah, I think other teachers, other professors will have other ways they do things, and that's why this is so exciting to me, because we'll get those insights and glimpses. So that might be your next target.
but yeah, there's a really different ways to do it.
Thank you all very much, and please don't hesitate to email me, stop by, or whatever, and let's keep this conversation going.